Beautiful Vancouver. Woo! Woo! Mountains, nice. Cooler weather's coming. Although I like the tropics, I'm just used to the cooler northern weather. Although can't really swim that much outdoors. Okay, that's Buddha, the sailing dog. Sit, Buddha. Sit. Sit. Good boy. Shake. Okay, good enough. He's a mountain dog. He doesn't like sitting around. But this is East Van. Hi. New Brighton Park. Interesting part about East Van, or as I call it, the Upper East Side of Vancouver, is we're very close to North Van, which locally in Vancouver here we call the North Shore, along with West Van. But New Brighton Park's kind of interesting because this is the birthplace of Vancouver. Okay, this is New Brighton Park. It's actually a really good park in East Van here. Come on, Buddha. There's two main bridges across the Burrard Inlet that separates, well, this is kind of seawater here, although we're about 7K from Lionsgate Bridge, but this is the second Narrows Bridge from Vancouver to North Van, and a few kilometers away is the first Narrows Bridge, which is Lionsgate Bridge. But anyways, just want to talk a little bit about my experience getting a delivery captain, and you know, especially getting some offshore experience with the delivery captain in the Gulf of Mexico. Hey Buddha, go play. You want to go sailing? Again, that's the second Narrows Bridge. That's Lindterm Dock over there. That's actually where I'm going to step my mast. Right at the foot of that bridge is Linwood Marina. It's owned by the Musqueam
Sorry, I
band,
meant
who
the
also
Squamish
own Mosquito
Nation.
Creek in North Van. But anyways, going through the Captain Ford's delivery checklist again. Very quickly, under the engine, he has oil and oil filters, transmission oil, fuel filters, primary and secondary. I guess primary Raycor. I'd get at least 3 of those primary fuel filters, because if there's a sludge in the gas tank, you'll go through those filters very quickly. Says check all the belts and proper adjustment. There'll be another video showing how we have one Yanmar belt and also water pump belt, and we blew them up at 2 in the morning. Although we had 3 sets, I don't think that was even enough. Another item, condition of the raw and fresh water hoses, check oil level in engine and transmission, check stuffing box for proper adjustment if there's a stuffing box, get spare stuffing for the stuffing box if there's a stuffing box. But I guess modern direct drives have a dripless shaft seal system, so please be familiar with that in case there's a leak, and how to seal up the leak, because that's a vulnerable area. If you hit the prop on something, what I did is I brought some bicycle tubing and a whole bunch of rescue tape. He says here, check prop shaft, transmission coupling bolts for tightness, check throttle and transmission shift linkage for tightness. Under navigation, normal items, radar, GPS, compass. I would bring a hand bearing compass. Make sure the depth sounder is all working. Check the navigation offset on your navigation system. If it's reading 0, Is that zero under the keel? Is that zero under the water, the draft? Or is there any offset from the transducer to the bottom of the keel? So if it's reading zero, what does that actually mean? Whistle or bell on board. Buddha! Buddha! Come here! Sorry, my dog's running over there. Come on, Buddha, good boy. VHF, make sure that's working. Check the manual bilge and the electric bilge pump. We had a major problem with both on board, and that's pretty damn scary. I'll talk more about that later. Make sure all running lights are working. It's common sense. Make sure the anchor lights are working. Under safety equipment, proper PFDs, make sure you got enough of them. Life raft, which I'll talk about in another episode. EPIRB, which is a pain in the ass to bring in, but I did get an EPIRB and an aviation life raft. I got an ACR EPIRB that I FedExed into Belize City. Fire extinguishers, first aid kit. Make sure you have valve flares, and I guess leak cloths if you have more than one. If you have guys sitting in a settee and so forth. Sailing hardware. Can you put at least 2 reefs in the mainsail? Condition of all sheets. Has standing rigging been inspected within the last 12 months? It's very important. Condition of the running rigging. Under mechanical, he has check you have proper anchor in road. Make sure the windlass is working. Make sure you have a spare anchor in road. Check out the steering cables, hydraulics, head, Y valve, holding tank working. Holding tank recently pumped out, obviously. And also on the mechanical, do you have a spare rudder or emergency tiller? Under spares and hand tools, do we have spare 14 gauge wire, butt connectors, strippers? Do you have electrical tape, electrical wire, hand tools, nuts and bolts, extra stainless steel clamps? Get a couple rolls of rescue tape, obviously duct tape, a bunch of tubes of 5200 sealant, underwater sealant from 3M. What other things I found very useful was we bought a metric socket set that helped with some engine adjustments, especially when the fan belts blew up. Buddha! Metric wrenches. Buddha, come here! Very, very important, which I didn't have, is breeze boosters or some kind of ventilation system while you're underway. We were just dying. Inside the boat was at least 90 degrees Fahrenheit at night. It was just horrendous, so we weren't resting very well because we didn't have enough ventilation. Even if you slept in the cockpit, waves would come at you. A waterproof flashlight, a GoPro in case you foul the prop. You can stick a GoPro under to check what's fouling your prop. Scuba fins, obviously. One really good thing, kind of a luxury but also a safety component, is I put a cockpit knife, a fishing knife, in the cockpit, and we found that we use that knife a lot. Bolt cutters in case you have a demasting, hopefully not. Whole bunch of zip ties, bleach, and putting this all together, which I'll talk about in another video, weather routing service along with an Iridium Go, and obviously backup navionics, but make sure you have the proper charts. And last but not least, really study the currents of where you're going and combine that with wind, because I think you should have 3 possible destinations. Buddha! 3 possible destinations. We had Fort Lauderdale, Rockport, Texas, and we ended up in Tampa, but we didn't have any maps for Tampa. We had maps for Fort Lauderdale and Rockport, but we kind of went into Tampa almost blind. So we had to wait 12 hours until daylight so that we could go into St. Petersburg in the daytime. So to wrap up my experience with Captain Ford, He was an amazing captain, very diligent, very professional, very high energy. Never got mad once. So I don't know if he is continuing to do deliveries, but he's an amazing guy. He doesn't mind, obviously, the owner on board. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. Very, very professional, smart, and capable delivery captain. I was very lucky to have him, and he was very flexible on time. Because I wanted to go to Belize early to make sure everything was right. We put in a parallel switch, we cleaned the fuel tank beforehand, we checked everything, we installed a radar reflector, and we also had a little fun in Belize. So I brought the captain down at least a week early, and I paid for his hotel, and he'd never been to Belize, so he was kind of game for sticking around. Obviously, a lot of delivery captains are on a very tight schedule, so I was very lucky. I don't know what he's doing. I was very lucky with Captain Ford, and he gave me a flat rate for roughly an 800 to 1,000 nautical mile delivery, where you're averaging about 6 knots an hour times 20 to 24 hours. So he gave me a very fair rate, but I brought him down to Belize early. I just paid for his food and his hotel, but he actually spent 3 weeks with me, and I learned a lot off of Captain Ford, and he kept the rate. He kept the flat rate, even though we spent a whole 3 weeks together. Very good guy, solid guy. I was also very lucky to have Rob, my friend, longtime friend, who's a firefighter for the Burnaby Fire Department. He came along for 3 weeks, and we appointed him safety officer, and we definitely needed him. Not only is he a safety professional, very strong mentally and physically. Firemen like to cook, so he did most of the cooking, and he actually enjoyed cooking. So we couldn't have done it without you, Rob. Honestly, after the third night doing 4-hour watches, for a guy like me, I'm just not used to the heat. And again, we didn't have proper ventilation in the boat underway. So the heat was really affecting our sleep. And I guess we're just not particularly used to it, being from the Canadian West Coast. So, but another interesting thing that I learned is I met a guy, John, very interesting guy. Used to be an AMA professional motorcyclist, and somehow he got into sailing by going with his buddy who thought the world was going to end. So he sold everything and bought an island packet in Seattle, and they headed down to Mexico to see if the world was going to end according to the Mayan calendar, and it didn't. So the guy was upset the world didn't end, and then he gave this guy I met, John, in Isla Mujeres, he gave him the boat to take care of for a while until this guy resorted his life. But my point is, John told me he put an ad for a crew member. He put an ad for a crew member on some cruiseseeker.com, and he had over 300 applications. 300 guys wanted to go with John from Panama City to Mexico. So what's my point? There's lots of guys and gals who are willing to be a crew member, pay their fair share, and if you get along with them, meet some new people, and have some guys helping around the boat. So that's another option I would consider next time.